All right, next up on the show is Priscilla Moreno with PM Insurance Group, who helps small business owners and the self-employed find medical insurance. Priscilla, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. So how did you get involved in the insurance industry? What was the catalyst there?
I mean, I grew up wanting to be an insurance agent. I'm kidding. I was like, wow.
I was ready to buy in on that too. I don't know.
I always say because you don't find insurance. Insurance found me, right? So I was a district manager for Dillard's and Chico's. I did a lot of retail management. And so I worked a lot of developing other businesses. So for me, I knew that I had that entrepreneur mindset in my heart. I just didn't know where to go. So then my next step from there, I went into healthcare administration. I was kind of a glorified receptionist. And then I just found myself getting super complacent there. I was like, okay, you know what? I have a little bit of my life back. I have my weekends. I don't have to work inventory on my 30th birthday like I did in retail. Although I absolutely loved it because I just felt like I was a shopper for someone else, but I didn't have any more growth. So that's why I went into healthcare. Yeah. But I learned a lot in that industry. I learned how to, medical billing and how that side of it works, taking people's insurance cards instead of helping them find insurance. So for me, it was like, well, how do I get everything that I've learned from the retail industry, developing other businesses, and then everything that I've learned in health insurance, in the medical billing, how do I put those two together? And I just kind of thought about it. And then I told one of my really good friends, she's a recruiter. I was like, hey, can you help me work on my resume? Because I haven't applied for a job in 15 years because I was always recruited somewhere. And so I was like, can you help me work on my resume? She goes, sure. So she puts it online to work on it. And she was like, Priscilla, I should have charged you for this. This was so bad. And she didn't post it she didn't post it anywhere to apply. She just posted to work on it. And somehow somebody in insurance found it. And called me and said, hey, you need to go in insurance. And I was like, that's kind of what I've been praying for. It's, what I've learned in medical billing and the health insurance side, verifying benefits and helping clients understand their benefits on that side of it, and then running a business. I was like, that's kind of marrying the two together. But when I went to go talk to them, I was like, this is a complete scam because it's insurance. Everyone thinks that, right? And so I was like, well, I don't think I can. I said, no, absolutely not. I can't do this. At that point, I had taken a huge pay cut going into healthcare administration. All of my bills reflected a 6-figure earner. And then I went into healthcare and cut my income in half. And so I was barely surviving. And so when I went there, I was like, I can't afford to go into entrepreneurship. And so at some point I was like, well, it's always, if it's not now, it's never. If I don't take the leap of faith now, I'm going to constantly push it off and say I can't because I'm going to come up with different reasons. So I, fell off the cliff, the insurance cliff, and then decided to move forward. And that first year tested a lot about me. I learned a lot about me. At that point, it's funny. It's just all entrepreneurship, right? Like, I feel like people don't go into entrepreneurship because things are going amazing. I'm in a corporate job and I love it. People usually go into entrepreneurship because they've hit rock bottom. And so at that point for me, I was like, well, I need to learn a lot about what's going on, like my first and second year, so I can give back to that community and people that are struggling in that.
That's an interesting take on it because it's not from like lack of options.
Right.
But it's almost an abundance of, hey, I have all of this. I want to do something more with it.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, there's probably a good amount of the population that's like, oh, all entrepreneurs, they go into it because they have money and I don't have money, so I'm not going to. And to your point, I think a lot of us have stumbled into entrepreneurship with very little money on our hands. But I think that feeds into the ingenuity, and you don't have to have a lot of money. You just got to figure out other ways to earn it. What was your experience with that first couple of years being your own business owner?
Mm-hmm. Well, so, to your point, when I started, my checking account was overdrawn. And in my head, I was like, I had to find a way. There was no way of finding an excuse. I was like, I have to find a way to make this work. When I look back, I was like, I could have probably found an excuse, but I'm glad I had the mindset of like, I have to find a way. So just going into that is, going into that first year, we'll definitely test you, but it's just one of those things where you have to really, truly trust the process, because you reevaluate everything, and it's like, where do I go from here? And I'm like, if I just continue to help people and move forward, then I'm gonna continue to be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say the process, what process do you mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. Just the process of continuing to put yourself in front of people that can help you. The small business owner community, that's, for me, was what really truly changed my perspective and changed my life. I mean, to your point, like, a lot of people don't have money, but and I'm glad I didn't, because I didn't waste money, because I didn't have it to waste. So I didn't put money into, print ads where no one was going to see me because I couldn't afford to do it. So instead, I got all of those print ads and called everyone and said, hey, is this print ad working for you? I would love to have a connection with you. So just continuing to build those relationships, and then asking other small business owners, what is your experience with being a small business owner or being an entrepreneur? What is your experience, and how have you grown? And implementing that into my own personal growth, trusting that if I'm growing in myself, that my business is going to be the outcome of me growing.
I love that, because a lot of that is, lead generation, but on a more relational level. You did not have the funds to be able to spend a lot on marketing, spend a lot on putting yourself on bus benches and ads. So you had to get really creative. And I think that's what a lot of people overlook when they're just starting, is you can generate business for free. It's not really free, because your time and your energy and your effort is put into it. But it is possible if you're diligent about it. And then you're getting in front of people, you're meeting new people, you start to gain some traction. How did you leverage that into growing your business?
So at some point, somebody had asked me that year two, and I was like, I have no idea. And so then I had to go back and look at my schedule. And because I scheduled everything out, because I'm very, I think most entrepreneurs can relate to this. We're kind of all over the place. I say we're entrepreneur ADHD people, but, and so for me was going back, and because at that point I had a bunch of data. I was like, okay, well, I spent a lot of hours doing this, and I journaled a lot too, because when you're having fun, then it doesn't feel like work, because I was building these relationships, and I was listening to other people's stories. And for me, I was like, this is amazing. And I'd go home and I was like, I didn't work on my business today. I worked on other people's, and I'm still broke, So then I would journal and say everything that I took away from that and all of the work that I put in. So that way I can go back and say, I actually did work. So then I felt a little bit more fulfilled there. And then I wouldn't wake up in the middle of the night, like with having a heart attack, trying to send out emails. Like, I was like, no, I already journaled. I already know what my game plan is moving forward. And then all of that data I was able to put into, reevaluate and put it into my schedule, and then continue to repeat the process.
I love this, because Marc, you remember we were having a conversation about this. In all of our business, we are somehow collecting information, whether it be in numbers, in journal notes, in spreadsheets. It's all being collected somewhere. But what I love about this is you a couple years in, took the time to stop and look back at it and learn. And now, you're running a team of insurance agents, and you had to take that and disseminate it into a training program, but without stopping to consciously look at that data that you were collecting this whole time. How much use would it have been?
Right. Zero.
Zero. Yeah.
Yep.
So
other than maybe being therapeutic, right? For the process.
A nice way to get it all out. But I think that's a good reminder to almost every business owner out there, is like, you got to consciously interpret the information that you're collecting at some point. And it's hard, and it hurts to stop sometimes and actually review it and take some insight from what you're collecting. But it can be huge, because once you did that, between looking at that information and figuring out what you were doing to where you are today, how did that change things?
Oh, it changed dramatically. At that point, I almost doubled my business when I went back and looked. And because it went back to the first couple years, I was like, I trust the process, truly believe it, but when you're going into like your third year, like, well, I have all this data now. So how could I not trust the process? And then how could I not use some of those in good and bad, right? Like there's peaks and valleys. So there was a lot of things that I was looking at that I'm like, okay, I was in the peak here, but I was like very far in the valley here. So how do I make that streamlined a little bit so I'm not dipping as much? And then moving forward. But for me, like just entrepreneurship is like 90% mindset.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So going after like those 2 years, I was like, okay, now I trust myself and now I believe in myself. I believe that I can make an impact on people, where before I didn't think that I was good enough to be in entrepreneurship. I kind of believed in the process of like getting the job done and going out and meeting people that probably needed my services. But I was like, what if I still had that, what if I'm not good enough? And so after the first 2 years, when I was able to look back and I was like, I am good enough because I've been able to help this amount of people. And when I went back and asked, hey, why did you do business with me? Which is also could be very humbling. But when I went back and asked, I was like, I'm very curious because I want to be able to teach a lot of the things that I've learned. And I want to know why you decided to do business with me. A lot of them said, well, because you work really hard and I know that you're going to answer your phone. And I was like, okay, just getting some of those small affirmations. That's part of one of my love languages. Getting those small affirmations, I was able to put back into my business and say, well, when I have that small self-doubt, instead of losing time and continuing to harp on that self-doubt, no, somebody said that I was willing to work for them. So that dramatically impacted my business.
So we're actually out of time for the second, but you're sticking around for the second show.
Yes.
So we can get further. I really want to explore this fear too that people struggle with.
Absolutely.
And more to get into there. So Heather, any closing thoughts?
Well, I think a good closing thought is, taking away that mindset and just the keep working hard and trust the process and keep that mindset going forward. Because sometimes it takes a couple years to start really seeing traction, but if you stick with it, you're going to get there.
And I think to Alan's point earlier, let's take a little bit of time and figure out who we are as people, even as entrepreneurs. When you're talking, I'm thinking, well, these tests, this Myers-Briggs, Colby, Fascinating, Clifton strengths. It's like, take a look at those. Just assess yourself. Take whatever time it takes. It can't be that much time. Do an assessment and see what are your strengths and weaknesses so that maybe we can do better. But all right, but that's going to be it for this show. I hate being out of time, but we are. So as we wrap up the show, quick reminder to check out our latest podcast or catch video version of the show anytime by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. It's going to be it for us. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.